Hello, Banff. Good evening. Thanks, Bill. So I'll get right to the point. I have the privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight. So Jeanine Vany is a co-founder and executive vice president, corporate affairs at Eavor Technologies, headquartered in Calgary. Jeanine spearheads worldwide policy initiatives and energy advocacy efforts, driving Eavor's policy agenda and overseeing public affairs initiatives. She also actively shapes industry policies and advancements in the geothermal sector. Jeanine plays a key role in Eavor's innovation and strategic growth and has over 2 decades of experience as an APEGA registered professional geologist. She should have been here earlier today. in the oil and gas and geothermal industries. Prior to her current role, she built and led geoscience teams in delivering specific geoscience subsurface characterization methods for Eavor-Loop technology demonstrations, in addition to the establishing a global land portfolio. So Jeanine holds an honors Bachelor of Science degree in geology and environmental studies from St. Mary's University and a business essentials certificate from the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary. She's an active community volunteer, serving on several nonprofit boards, the Geothermal Rising Board as vice president, and I understand you were just in beautiful Hawaii, and a director of the Geo Convention Board in Calgary. Jeanine was honored with the inaugural Patricia J. Lee Trailblazer Award in 2021 and the Young Woman in Energy Award in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Jeanine to the stage. Jeanine.
Is there a pointer on this? Do you gentlemen know?
Yes.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Duke, for inviting me to be the keynote speaker this evening. My sincerest apologies that you got the long bio. Before I get started, I just want to make one thing very clear, very clear. I know that I am standing between you all and dessert. So I'll make it quick. But as Duke said, I am a co-founder and I work now on policy and regulatory issues because it is a huge challenge for new technology. So I decided to take the leap as someone who understands what you all do, the subsurface side, to try and de-risk a new element to the industry. As a geologist, I've worked 15 years in oil and gas before transferring into the geothermal industry. And I think I'm an example of I'm an example of someone who's come out of the petroleum industry and is taking my skills and everything I learned there to build the sustainable energy systems of the future. And every single day at Eavor, we uncover new questions that need to be answered, which underscores the value of groups like Energi Simulation and the importance of these strategic partnerships with industry and academia. So the purpose of my talk this evening is to share why our technology has the potential to change the energy landscape and to highlight the criticality of strategic partnerships. And if some of you come away being excited and interested in geothermal, I think I've done my job. Alberta is an energy powerhouse and has been for decades and will be for decades to come. However, the climate landscape is changing and we're all changing and adapting with that. And I understand the Energi Simulation Group funds a lot of different research initiatives that are sort of related but on the periphery of oil and gas. So trying to build out those transferable skills. And the story that I want to share tonight is Evor's story, which is exactly that. It's taking the oil and gas skills and the capital and the labor and the people and creating a new energy paradigm. And this type of undertaking needs research. It needs big brains, like all of you here in the room, and it takes an entire ecosystem. And I truly believe that strategic partnerships are the way to advance many, many things that we're trying to achieve in the world right now, whether that's on the business model side, whether that's in research, whether that's in the nonprofit space. You know, as Jeanine said, there's a woman on the board named Jeanine. And she said, like, we have to learn how to talk to one another. And she's right. We can disagree, but you know, how do we disagree? So really great conversations at the table tonight. Evor's mission is to enable local clean energy autonomy everywhere. And, you know, I'm really passionate about this topic. Like, what we are commercializing right now, it's not Eavor-Loops, it's not geothermal, it's energy security and reliability for nations that maybe are not rich in fossil fuels or ore deposits. Heat is ubiquitous, heat is everywhere. And that's the whole goal of next generation geothermal. That's the goal of Eavor, is to try and take average geothermal gradients and unlock geothermal energy in basically any region of the planet. So we take oil and gas to harness the heat beneath our feet to deliver utility scale heat and power. Our product is carbon free. It's everything is built under the ground, so there's no real land footprint other than the power plant. It's always on, so this 24/7, meaning baseload energy resource. These are really crucial topics in today's landscape while we're trying to power everything, electrify everything, the big AI demands coming onto the grid. Clean, firm power is something that is really sought after, and we're starting to see big changes in the market. So speaking of market, that's a good segue. For those of you who maybe are not as familiar with geothermal, I thought I would start with some market dynamics. There's about 16 gigawatts of electricity globally on the grid, spanning about 32 countries worldwide. What that really means is we have work to do. That's a drop in the bucket. That's less than, I think, 0.5% of the total energy supply. And, you know, geothermal is just too valuable to be kept in the ground. So what this slide is showing here, I actually borrowed it from Geothermal Rising. If you're not familiar with Geothermal Rising, I know some of you here are students. It's a nonprofit group down in the US, and they have a big conference every year, and there's a lot of papers and research happening in the space. But they shared this with me. So in the last year, $2.5 billion has been invested in geothermal startups, either on the R&D, either on the sort of developer side or on the technology side. So this is like a big shift. This is a big paradigm shift because geothermal's been around for 100 years. It hasn't really scaled. Why is that? Because we've been chasing aquifers on the Ring of Fire, basically. So there's been a lot of investment heating up, and the rocks haven't changed. I think it's the same with the unconventional shale revolution. The rocks didn't change, the technology changed, and that's sort of what's happening in the geothermal space right now. So the size of the prize, the total available market for geothermal just in the US alone, out to 2050, is $100 billion for heat and $130 billion a year for power. This slide's a couple of months out of date. I would say with the recent announcements in the AI space, it's much bigger than that. If you want to learn more, the US Department of Energy released a Pathways to Commercialization report, and it showed a vision of like 50 to 90 gigawatts of next generation geothermal power on the grid by 2050. And it's going to take about 225 to 250 billion US dollars to get there. So there's a lot of interest in the space. And if you look at the boxes, yes, of course, it's going to check every box they put on there, but they're good boxes. It's clean, it's firm, it's flexible, meaning it can dispatch to meet a load when required. It has minimal footprint, secure supply chain. The supply chain is the oil and gas supply chain. It hasn't been captured by foreign governments. So this is really attractive, at least on the North American side and the European side. Governments are really interested in trying to own a piece of this supply chain. And basically, in a nutshell, there's a really high growth potential for the space. Okay, so now a bit more about Eavor. We started up in 2017, and we started up on a simple bet that geothermal needs to be scalable, and only closed loop is truly scalable, which I know there's probably a lot of people in the room who'd like to discuss that, because we're turning some of the, we're trying to take a conductive heat transfer model, or use a conductive heat transfer model versus convective, which means we have to do a lot more drilling. So it's interesting, and it's highly contested space. And it's okay, it's good to ask those questions, because we do need to drill many more wells to get the same megawatts out of the ground. On the technical side, we have a track record of implementation. We built our pilot in Alberta back in 2019, called the Eavor-Light pilot. That ran for 5 years. We built the world's deepest, hottest directional well in North America in New Mexico in Q4 of 2022. And we developed some novel technology called insulated drill pipe, which I can speak a bit about later. And on the commercial side, we are building our first commercial project in Germany today. And we have an 8 megawatt electric feed-in tariff, not a feed-in tariff. We have an 8 megawatt electric power purchase agreement. There is a feed-in tariff in Germany. We often get asked, why are you deploying in Germany and not in Canada? Well, the pricing is a lot more favorable for new startups that are at the high end of the cost curve. So we are deploying in Germany now because we can be cost competitive there. And just to give you guys like the realm of the difference between the power costs here and there, the feed-in tariff is 252 euros a megawatt hour. Euros, so that's almost $500 Canadian a megawatt hour. So that's really high prices. And heating, since the Russian invasion, is 500 euros a megawatt hour. So that's some crazy pricing. But also underscores the situation that Europe is in right now. So on the financial side, I mean, we've raised 450 million of private capital, and we did receive a very big grant from the European Union Innovation Fund, 90 million euro grant. Again, going back to strategic partnerships, we would not have got this project off the ground without investment here in Canada in our pilots from our federal and provincial government and the European Union. We are also a technology licensing company, so that's from startup till now, we've developed a really big portfolio of patents. And the goal to scale this technology is to one day be able to license it. For those of you, I heard today was a carbon capture day, so which is very exciting. It's a space I'm trying to read up on myself. I thought in case there's a few people here who maybe aren't as up to speed on geothermal energy, I would just take a step back. Very simply, geothermal uses the heat beneath our feet to generate heat and electricity. And there's a whole value chain for geothermal, so it can go from all the way from heat pumps you would put in an individual house, all the way to like very deep geothermal multilateral wells where you're heat and powering entire cities. And again, as I mentioned in the opening remarks, heat is ubiquitous, and if we can figure out, and I challenge all the researchers in the room, how to unlock geothermal economically at average gradients, we can solve energy. So big brains, I want you to think about it. It's accessed through drilling like the oil and gas industry. And again, as I mentioned, it's the new technologies, so EGS, which is fracking, and AGS, which is closed loop, that are sort of really changing how investors and how governments are looking at geothermal. So here's the geothermal universe. I thought I'd put this in just as a level set. On the left-hand side, you see the open systems. So I know all of you are subsurface reservoir modelers, so you're very familiar with aquifers and transmissivity and how water moves. So oftentimes people say geothermal, you think of a hot spring, which is on the left. The direct flow is basically a hydrothermal aquifer in sedimentary rocks. It could also be in any kind of rock, to be honest. Doublets refer typically to an injection and a production well, and you could be fracking it or not fracking it. There's terminology for each. But then on the right-hand side, you see the closed loop systems. So the ground source heat pumps are individual. There's a lot of actually incentives around the world for installing heat pumps. There's air source and ground source. Ground source is, I think, a little bit better because they don't have the same freezing problems and stuff in the winter. But the thing that all the closed loop solutions have in common is their conductive heat transfer, and there's no exchange with fluids in the reservoir. So on the right, you see 3 schematics. This pointer is like, there we go. So this is showing Evor's technology progression. So the first U-shaped one is the one we drilled in Alberta, and we had to drill that because nobody wanted to buy our product until we put one in the ground. And I'll talk about the objectives of that later. But once we built that one, it enabled us to scale it up and build the second schematic that you see, which is the multilateral wells. That's what we're building in Germany today. We have 80 kilometers of subsurface well drilling to do. And in the far right is the deeper and hotter. And again, trying to get to geothermal anywhere, our vision is to be able to drill deep, almost in this 10-degree angle, to access more heat per meter drilled. So just to zoom in on the technology, you see the 2 vertical well bores. So we build a pad, we drilled 2 wells on one pad, we drill simultaneously, we complete it like you would complete any oil and gas well, according to all environmental regulation. And then we turn the bend, we set the intermediate casing, and then we drill out the multilateral wells, and we connect them toe-to-toe using anti-collision technology called magnetic ranging. So we've done this commercially in Alberta, and we've done it at 4.5 kilometers depth. So we can connect 2 6-inch well bores 4.5 kilometers under the ground. Once we have connected the loop, we pump down a chemical sealant called rock pipe, and it sets up, it's not a filter cake, it actually, oops, I hit my thing. It's not a filter cake, it actually sets up in the porosity and the permeability space and acts like a steel casing. And it's made up of, like, it's alkali silicate, it's used in brewing, and it's pretty environmentally safe. I think we use it a lot in oil and gas and lost circulation mud. So once we've sealed it off, then we fill it full of water so we can truck in water. And it's about the size of an Olympic swimming pool. And I feel really bad saying this to such esteemed people in this room, but I talk to policymakers and they really like the Olympic-sized swimming pool analogy. So, but that water goes round and around forever. So this operates on a thermosiphon mode. So we have a small pump on surface, and we turn the pump on, and it pushes the cold water down the inlet well, and it goes along the horizontal, comes around the bend, and goes back up to the surface, hotter than it went in, and then we can put that into an organic Rankine cycle unit, which is a power plant, to convert it to electricity, or we can put it into district heating, piping to heat and cool cities. I think I covered everything on that one. So this differentiates, our system is differentiated from hydrothermal because it's closed loop. We don't require a permeable aquifer. It's driven by this natural thermosiphon. So once we turn the pump on and it starts to move through based on the density differences in the fluid, we turn the pump off, and this thing just operates all on its own. So we don't have any parasitic load as well, which is also a key differentiator. There's no greenhouse gas emissions. We have minimal continual water use. So unless we have some form of leak off, we really don't we don't have any other water requirements. And I guess the key factor that our investors like is we have 80% less operating expenses than conventional geothermal, and our output is very predictable. There's a bit of a misnomer out there that closed loop wells will cool off really fast, and that's the end of them. And that's true if you design your pipes too big, or you don't space your wells properly, or you flow it too hard. But the math has been done by TNO, which is a really well-respected research organization in the Netherlands, and it's been done by the National Renewable Energy Lab, and I think Noetic back in the day. So the math has been done, it's just physics, this works, and we sort of cool off in the first 5 years, sort of almost an exponential, and then it just levels off for about 30 years. So this presents a bit more like wind and solar when you're trying to finance it. So on to the environmental attributes. This slide is showing the emissions and material intensity for different power generation sources. So from left to right on the bottom, you'll see coal, gas, Ever or geothermal in the middle, then wind and solar. So the orange bars are showing you emissions intensity in tons of CO2 per terawatt hour. Yes, per terawatt hour. So obviously we all know coal is a high carbon intensity burning fuel. Gas is looking pretty good there. But once we get over to the right hand, there's no emissions associated with wind or solar. But the blue bars are showing a mining tail. So this McKinsey study has normalized material intensity in tons of copper equivalent per terawatt hour. So what you really have here are different energy power generation sources that have some environmental impact. Of course, all energy production will. But geothermal lives in this sweet spot where it doesn't really have a mining tail and it doesn't have a lot of emissions. So this is very attractive, and I think this is one of the reasons why geothermal is coming to the fore right now. And as I mentioned, that supply chain is the oil and gas supply chain. And that is valuable because that means it's secure. On the water side, I've got 3 technologies on here. On the left is hydrothermal, and the middle is enhanced geothermal or the fracking systems, and on the right is the Eavor-Loop. So hydrothermal requires water for basically reservoir maintenance if they're drawing down their reservoir. EGS uses a lot more water because of the fracking operation, but I believe 80% of it roughly is recycled. So I think we could probably shrink this graph. I'd have to double check the numbers. On the Ever side, we use water in drilling and almost none in operation. So this is another key environmental advantage to the technology. And then there's the footprint. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So you can see the big footprint of the wind farms and the solar farms, and the Eavor-Loop is built under the ground. And basically for the same surface land use, an Eavor-Loop is expected can generate 35 times more power than solar and 300 times more power than wind. And this is in places in Europe where real estate is a premium. This is a really valuable attribute to all geothermal. So finally, a really unique and interesting tidbit about our technology that not a lot of people know is that we're dispatchable. And that means that we can load follow. So the graph in the top right is showing a 24-hour period and then output in megawatts on the y-axis. So the yellow is the solar curve. So of course, when the sun comes up, you've got so much electrons going onto the grid. In a lot of places, they have to curtail or sell it at negative pricing. So in areas with high market penetration of wind and solar, you want technologies that can harden the grid, make it more secure so you don't have as much instability in the grid. And so we can turn the flow rate down because we're closed loop. It's really easy to do that. So we can turn it down during the hours of the day, like turn the flow rate down during the hours of the day that the sun is shining. And then when the sun goes down and the utility needs to dispatch a load to meet, the dishwashers and all the lights and the air conditioning, we can ramp up to do that. And so it's geothermal is base load, which is really, really important. But in a lot of areas, that base load is going to waste if you've got a ton of wind and solar. So this is a really valuable attribute that conventional geothermal can do as well. I know there's at least 1 or 2 plants doing it in the world, and the EGS scene is testing it out as well. So Earth battery, that's what I think. Okay, only 2 slides left. I said I wouldn't be too long because dessert has to come. But I did want to talk a bit about our journey, I guess, from startup to scale up. So the first big step on the road to commercialization is, of course, building that prototype. So we took, and I just found out that Mr. Smith over here knows a lot about my company, and he said, I know your boss, and I'm going to tell him how you did tonight. I said, oh. And by the way, I'm an investor in your company. Oh, another surprise. But back in the early days, we had no money, like none. We had raised like $400,000 at the golf club and probably Mr. Smith's money as well, which he told me wasn't very much. And so we had to be creative. So we took all off-the-shelf technology. So everything we used in that pilot was already a high TRL. And then we just stuck it together in a unique way to build it. So we got Yeah, we literally had $400,000 in the bank, and we got a government grant, 2 government grants to build this pilot. And the customers in Europe, they wanted to like see the heat, touch the pipe, make sure it worked, make sure we could connect those wells toe to toe. So many people didn't believe that we could connect these wells using magnetic ranging, and quite frankly, neither did I. I was drilling it and having a heart attack. And we connected it first try. But that just underscores you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, the experts were telling me this technology is old and it will work, and it worked, right? But we used it to connect wellbores instead of avoid them. So I think that was the key point to this slide, is to show we took off-the-shelf technology, reconfigured it in a novel way, and then the picture on the right is the gentleman on the rig who did the first intersection. This is one of my favorite pictures of the entire 7 years of my time at the company, because they were so proud to be a part of something new in the industry. And they were using all of their skills from oil and gas to build a geothermal plant. So where we are today is we took that little prototype that we stuck together with $13 million from the government using off-the-shelf technology and brought it to Germany, where we are currently drilling and have been drilling since July. So we have 4 big pads to drill there. It's an 8 megawatt project. We're offsetting 44,000 tons of CO2 per year, and we'll have power on the grid in 2025. So you can see there we've got 2 rigs. They're kind of on the same pad, and in the middle is a power plant. That power plant, that's an old picture. It's almost fully complete now. And on the left, we have the partner summit. So we had about 200 people come, just show up at the site in September from all around the world, because they're just very interested in it. And we know we have a lot of challenges in front of us, and we have a lot of research we need to do and a lot of strategic partnerships we have to make. But we also know if we can do it, we're going to have a meaningful impact in the energy space. So in closing, I don't want to spend much time on this. We do have like a big pipeline of projects, but we're trying to stay very focused right now in Europe, in Germany. That's our core market. We have a company stood up there, and in North America. And one of the key value propositions of our company in Europe is heat. So the district heating networks in Europe, and I know we've got people from the Netherlands here, they're coal-fired fed, a lot of them, and they want to shut in the coal and plug in any form of geothermal, whether it's our geothermal or not. And so there's a huge, huge market there for next generation geothermal to be heating and cooling on the city level in Europe. So in closing, we're trying to make geothermal scalable. This is one way. There are other ways. Cheer us on, please. Our solution, it is born out of oil and gas, and I know I've been banging the oil and gas drum, but I just think it's really important for especially students or people, at least in North America, to realize that those degrees that you get that used to be petroleum focused, they've just been renamed. They're the same degree. There's more maybe environmental policy and stuff, but it's the same skills, and it's critical thinking, as we were talking about at the table. As long as we can think critically, we can solve these issues. And we need researchers, particularly on the geomechanics side. So Pat and Apostolos and Rick from U of A, looking really forward to talking more with you about how we're going to drill ultra-deep wells in Alberta. And just on a personal note, in closing, it has been quite the journey over the last 7 years. I came into the company as a senior geologist, like I was a senior geologist, but then all of a sudden an executive in this little tiny company that had no money. So that's a big learning curve, right? Like you go from staring at maps and drilling and then trying to lead and build a technology and raise money, and it's been hard. And I will say that creativity, vision, and resilience are probably the three biggest attributes you need. And for me, the creativity comes a lot from the people around me. I'm really amazed at the engineers and geologists in our company, that they come to work every day with new ideas, and they're not afraid to try. And the core DNA in our company is fail fast, like try it and fail fast, which I think in research you're pretty comfortable with trying new things. That's the whole point of what you do. So those are the three attributes, and we need researchers to help us on this journey. And with that, I can take any questions. Oh, was there questions? Was there supposed to be questions? Oh. Yeah, does anybody have questions? And really, big brains, don't ask me about reservoir simulation because I don't know the answer. No questions? Pat, you wanted to ask about something? Oh, there's one. I'll repeat the question.
I'm a professor, so I can speak Latin. So there will be a quiz after my question. So have you tried volcanic regions like Iceland to go so deep and so hot, just extreme case and see what will happen? Like it would go, produce steam.
We have not. So the thing about, I guess, places like Iceland, typically geothermal gradients roll over. So it's sort of an incline, and then it gets really hot, and then you go back to the convective gradient, which is, I think, not well known by everybody, but subsurface people know this. What we're finding in these volcanic regions is it's some of the most difficult drilling in the world as well. So our thesis is if we can stay away from drilling on the side of volcanoes, it's a bit more low-hanging fruit. We may not get the temperatures, but we will have technical success. And that's our approach right now. But it took us 7 years to get to that point. I have looked at every volcano, I can tell you that. Yeah.
Second brief question. So we have lava, we have all these volcanic events, this Iceland also happening as well. Is there a technical way to extract heat from the surface when this happens? So it's not drilling, we would have some technology that will extract massive heat when volcanic active zones happen, so we call it disaster or some natural thing, but there is massive heat to the surface, so we can really use it.
So the question is, when the lava comes to the surface, is there some technology that could extract the heat from the surface? The answer to that is I actually don't know. I'm sorry. I haven't thought about that. Does anybody know the answer to that one? No.
Just it was so innovative, I thought maybe that's also one way to extract heat.
Well, yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. We need researchers. And more funding, but over the course of 7 years, we've worked with TNO, we've worked with UVA, U of C, we've worked with University of Toronto. TU Delft, not yet. It's coming. We have a project in the Netherlands in Tilburg. So there you go. Yeah, it's in design phase right now. So if there's no other questions, I'll let you guys get on to. Yeah, sure.
It's Rick. I got to find a way to get University of Alberta on there after U of C.
Yeah, that's, you know what? That's my bad, because my team told me that they were talking to U of A too, and I was like, oh no, it's not on my slide.
My heart almost. No.
I'm so sorry.
Can you actually speak to this? Speaking of creativity, resilience, and vision that you had in the last point, you've been leading this Alberta drilling accelerator thing. So can you just speak to sort of perhaps the vision, if you like, for what is it focused on? Maybe a lot of people who don't know about it, but Eavor has been at the key of that and leading some of that. Maybe if you could speak to that, and then we'll talk about how to get UVA.
Okay. It was an oversight. I submitted my slides 3 days ago, and my team didn't get back to me to tell me who we were all working with till today. So I knew I was going to get called out for that one. So the question is, could I shed some light on the Alberta Drilling Accelerator? So I'm going to start from the beginning. For those of you who don't know what it was announced in April of 2024 as a partnership between Eavor, Canadian Association of Energy Contractors, and Cangia. So we pitched a proposal to the government to fund us to do a feasibility study to understand the market viability of putting together a test bed in Alberta to drill deep. So we're almost done the feasibility study now, and we've done listening campaigns. We've met with different stakeholders from technology companies, oil and gas companies, geothermal companies, startup companies, technology companies, and academic institutions. So we took a cross-section and we went out and we asked everybody the same questions. And we think we have the market uptick we need to get this off the ground. And so the concept of it is to fund technology agnostic drilling innovation. So if you're in carbon capture and you have some novel drilling technique, you can come to the test bed. If you're in the lithium space, you can come to the test bed. So it wasn't meant to, to call out geothermal, simply because I think this test bed could have a big, long life ahead of it and doesn't need to be anchored to one particular commodity. So the vision we have is 2 streams. The first stream is and it's a public-private partnership. That's, I think, the key point, is we're trying to pool capital into the space. So it's going to be 50-50 public and private money. That's not approved yet, but that's our pitch. So stream 1 would be funding your prototype design, and it's desktop research or lab research. And that you must have a value proposition for Alberta, but you can be sitting anywhere and apply for this funding. It's open to global applicants. And then stream 2 is a physical test site where we're going to build a pad, mob in a rig or rigs, depending on who shows up, because there are really disruptive ideas out there right now that are a complete step change from oil and gas. So like non-mechanical forms of drilling, think millimeter wave drilling. That's the idea, is to have a test bed. You could take your prototypes from stream 1 and come in and test in the field in stream 2, or some stakeholders we talked to said, I want to do it in my own wells. Why would I come to your test bed? So we're also funding that if we get approved. So if you're geothermal company X or lithium company Y or an oil company, you can apply and get funding to test novel drilling techniques in your own wells as well. So it is industry-led, but we are really wanting to, again, come back to the strategic partnerships with academia. So we're trying to figure out how to stand this arm's length incubator up. Ever's been leading it simply because they needed a leader, but we'll be handing that off, and it will be an arm's length drilling test bed, open for everybody, managed completely by other people other than Eavor. So you just sometimes need people to blaze the path, and so we put up our hands, and we're getting there. So we expect an announcement to come by the end of the year. Well, hopefully we'll hear more about that by the end of the year. Hope that answers your question, Rick.